Hello, I'm John Tate, President of Campaign for Liberty. Thanks for taking a few minutes to watch this video. Recently, there's been a lot in the news about right-to-work laws and collective bargaining and other issues like that. Campaign for Liberty, just like Congressman Paul, strongly support efforts to pass right-to-work laws and strongly support worker freedom. But a lot of our folks, a lot of you out there are new to this issue and have some questions, and we've received those questions, and I thought, what better way to get your questions answered than to come right to the source? So I'm here today with my good friend Mark Mix, president of Right to Work. Mark's been fighting compulsory unionism for over 25 years, and I figured who better to answer some of these questions than Mark. So Mark, thanks for taking the time to do this and answer these questions.
John, it's great to be here with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, sure. Well, you know, like I said, I think you're the man to do this. As you know, Mark, as I mentioned, Congressman Paul has been a longtime supporter of Right to Work. He's been a spokesman for Right to Work, a co-sponsor of your bills in Congress. But a lot of our people are new to this issue and they don't understand it. And we're getting a lot of questions as we've taken some action in Wisconsin and in Indiana and New Hampshire. Some of our state groups have done some work on the issue, and we're getting a lot of questions, and we compiled a few of them. And what I'd like to do today is just start with the basics and ask you some of the simple questions that we keep getting asked every day.
Sure.
The first one, of course, is what is Right to Work? What exactly does it do?
Well, John, I wish it was more complicated because I would sure like to be perceived as an intellectual, but it's very simple. Right to Work, we believe that every worker must have the right to join a union, but no worker should be compelled to join or pay dues or fees to a union to get or keep a job. It's a basic matter of individual freedom. It fits with the issues of kind of individual rights, individual freedom, and it's really quite simple.
Great. Yeah, that's. I remember years ago talking about the National Right to Work law, and that, you know, one of the shortest bills ever introduced in Congress, and of course that's because it just repealed some language. But that brings up another point. What's the difference between a state right to work law and a national right to work law?
Well, the goal of both is the same. The goal of both is to break down compulsory unionism. The reason why we have state right to work laws is because the federal government is responsible for forced unionism. Back in 1935, during the Franklin Roosevelt era, the United States Congress went into the states and took their rights to manage private sector labor management relations and brought them back to Washington, like they've done with so many things since then.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
So from 1935 to present, we have a federal law that says workers can be fired for failure to tender dues as a condition of employment. Now, interestingly enough, that federal law preempts state law. So in 1947, Congress came back and said, you know, we went too far in 1935, and they tried to correct it. And instead of repealing the entire federal framework of forced unionism, they said, we're going to keep that in place, but we're going to allow states, if they can, by affirmative action, outlaw what is known in common parlance as the closed shop. So basically what happened is the federal government took the power from the states. They recognized how unbelievably big this power was for union officials. They tried to come back and correct it. Instead of repealing the law, they provided more further regulation, but they did say that states could preempt the federal government, if they could affirmatively pass laws that outlaw closed shop unionism. Those laws are known today as right to work laws, and 22 states have done that.
Great. Okay. Oh, that's a very good explanation. So, so why the need for a national right to work law then, and would it be constitutional?
Yeah. Well, if we're going to eliminate compulsory unionism, we've got to go where it's resident. And it is resident, unfortunately, in the National Labor Relations Act, which is the federal policy that manages labor manages labor management relations in the United States. So the first solution is to go back to the federal government, repeal the provisions in federal law that authorize forced unionism. That would give a bias of voluntary unionism across the country. Now, is that constitutional? I believe so. I think we've got a First Amendment issue, we've got a 10th Amendment issue, we've got a 13th Amendment issue, we've got all those amendments that I think back up the idea of individual freedom. So we can do it one of two ways. We can do it through eliminating the forced unionism in federal law, or in theory, and this may be a little harder, we could go to all 50 states and pass right-to-work laws and do it that way.
States. Well, one of the things we hear from some folks is that you know, right to work is anti-union and it destroys unions, and, you know, hey, aren't unions good for the average working man and woman?
Yeah. I can't think of anything that's more pro-union, frankly, John. You know, the idea that union officials have the ability to compel people to pay them as a condition of employment has done several things to the union movement. First of all, they're wards of the state. Their power is a resident of their political power. It's no longer selling a product to individual workers across America, and I think the statistics reflect that. I mean, union membership in the private sector is way down, and I think it reflects the fact that union officials can take your money and they can use it for politics and causes which you disbelieve and have no accountability to you, the rank and file worker. Now, in a right-to-work state where there's unions, and there are very strong and aggressive unions in right-to-work states, those workers have an accountability to union officials. If a union official does something crazy politically, those workers can vote with their pocketbooks and say, I'm not giving you any more of my money. So what we think we have is we have what Samuel Gompers, the founder of the AFL, envisioned as the mission of organized labor. He said that which comes together through voluntarism is inherently stronger than anything that's cobbled together through compulsion. And what he meant was, if union officials rely on government for their power and they compel people to join them, they're going to destroy themselves. And what we're seeing now is a last gasp effort by organized labor to maintain their power in government.
Right, absolutely. One of the other claims we hear a lot is that the average pay in a right-to-work state is far less than that in a compulsory unionism state. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that topically everyone has statistics, but here's the reality of that. Union officials study wages and they compare the entire country. So what they're telling you is that a plumber that makes $75 an hour in New York City is doing better than a plumber who makes $35 in Provo, Utah, simply because the guy in New York City is a union member. The fact of the matter is, when you basically compare cost of living indexes and you compare apples to apples, the Nobel Prize winning economics department at George Mason University has studied, and they say that workers in right-to-work states have about $2,500 more a year in disposable income than their brethren in the forced unionism states. Barry Hirsch, the former president of the North American Economist Society, did a study. He found that almost $5,000 in disposable income differential between workers in right-to-work states and non-right-to-work states because of the cost of living. And when you compare it correctly, you'll find that workers in right-to-work states are a lot better off.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's a little more expensive to live in New York than it is in Provo, Utah, or
That's right.
or Martinsville, Virginia.
That's right.